My name's Howard Forrester. I'm the Enforcement Delivery Manager for Area 4. Area 4 is predominantly the West Midlands, so we're Staffordshire, Shropshire, West Midlands down to Hereford, Worcester and Gloucestershire. It's quite a big enforcement area. I have about 75 examiners and managers who are working for me. What I want to try and do today is just give you an idea of compliance and the sort of way that we try and be effective in the way we target operators. So it's not, it's an informed decision at the roadside. And then I'd like to show you some of the things we find at the roadside and what we identify as non-compliance. This is for 2017-18. You can see from that we stopped 278,000 vehicles last year, well that year before, and issued, it says there, £3.8 million in fines. It was actually 3.9 million. But the other things we've done is, if you look at the bottom, we've prosecuted a lot of fraud cases. And that's fraud in driver's hours manipulation. It also includes the MOT test scheme, where people who've MOT testers who've actually passed vehicles without even seeing them. We've prosecuted quite a number of those, included in a number of prison sentences for some of the testers. And we've also done quite a bit of work on Bluetooth fraud in the driver test arena, where people are using Bluetooth devices to circumvent the theory test. All these things are quite serious cases, and they're where we need to be putting our resource. The remit of what DVSA do, particularly in enforcement, is initially we police the operator licence scheme. That's heavy goods vehicle licensing and public service vehicles. That's both on the maintenance side, making sure you've got good systems. It's on the driver's hours, to making sure you comply with driver's hours legislation, and that you comply with the undertakings you make when you sign the bottom of an operator licence form, which I'm sure Mr Denton may mention later. We also do roadside compliance checks. That includes quite a number of non-UK vehicles. As I mentioned earlier, we police the MOT car scheme. That's 20,000 garages nationally, and that includes our vehicle examiners going to those garages, making sure that they're providing correct MOT tests. That's across all the schemes. We also have a team of examiners who monitor approved driving instructors to make sure that people who are having driving tests are getting training at a suitable level. And that's much the same for compulsory basic training for motorcycles. We have a team of examiners who make sure that the people providing that training are doing it at a DVSA standard. And as I've mentioned at the bottom, we have a counter-fraud and investigation team. To give you a quick idea of the scale of what we're trying to deal with, is there's 500,000 heavy goods vehicles registered in this country. Third one down, 4 million light goods vehicles. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I think the one that's probably surprising to most people is there's 1.7 million non-UK vehicles enter the country every year. And that's about 3.3% of all vehicle movements are non-UK, so they're foreign vehicles. We have a lot of emphasis on stopping non-UK vehicles, and it's quite a high percentage of the vehicles that we stop at the roadside are non-UK. How we do that is we've got a strategic network of sites across the country. For Area 4, which is my area, the biggest site would be Doxy on the M6, which some of you guys may be aware of. That's a big site with a lot of facilities. It has AMPR, it has roller brake testers, inspection facilities. But we also, in this area, we have a small check site at Quinton on the M5, a tail of the A40 at Ross-on-Wye, and a couple on the A5. But we also use a lot of temporary check sites, so service areas, lay-bys, regional distribution centres, where we're likely to encounter people that we think might be non-compliant. We also do a lot of checks at Alton Towers, Drayton Manor Park. This is on buses, and a lot of the shows where we're looking at, for example, catering vehicles, which have a history of being quite non-compliant, and showmen and that type of vehicle. We also work on the ports, obviously, at Dover and well, all the major ports, Immingham, Portsmouth. And At the bottom, we do a lot of work with, in this area, Central Motorway Police Group, also Highways England, and almost all the major enforcement agencies. As an organisation, what we've tried to do is to be more proactive in the way we target people. So use technology to be able to effectively stop vehicles that are non-compliant. So we can leave the people who are good operators and trying to do a good job, we can leave them alone and focus our effort on non-compliance. We do that with it in a number of ways. I'm going to go through these in a little bit of detail. There's ANPR at the top. Most of you will be aware of operator compliance risk score. Some of you may be aware of weigh in motion. And then we have the wheel drive over system and the search application. NAS, we call this NAS. It's actually replacing the existing ANPR system nationally. At the moment, DVSA have ANPR cameras, each police force has ANPR cameras, DVLA have cameras, highways, they've all got different systems. This year, they've all been linked together to make a single platform, and that's standardising ANPR across the country, so we don't have to make a request to, I don't know, West Midlands Police for ANPR data. We have access to that data. This has been approved by our executive committee for a 12-month trial. It's quite expensive, but we think it's going to change the way that we carry out enforcement using ANPR. It's increased our capability to 10,000 cameras nationally. That's caused us a bit of a problem because what do you do with all that data? It's a huge amount of data. So we're looking at how we can best use that to target non-compliant operators. We're at the moment trialling 20 different checks. The top 4 probably for us on identifying non-compliance. The top one, evidence of illegal operators. We currently use this to actually identify a coach operator in Bristol, travelling along the M4 every day without an operator's licence. We've been able to use the cameras to evidence that that chap is moving his vehicles every single day along a fixed pattern. It then gives us the opportunity to have a hotspot so we know where he's going to be at a specific time, so we can then stop the vehicles and impound them. So that's really, really useful for us. Illegal operations used to be quite expensive because we needed surveillance and we needed a lot of manpower to establish where the operators are going to be. Using cameras, it makes it a lot more effective. Tachograph manipulation, really, really useful. At the moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about tachograph manipulation later, but now we can stop a vehicle in Scotland and he may say, the driver may say, oh, we had a arrest in Birmingham. We can then do the last 10 or 20 hits on ANPR, and that might well show that he was driving when he says he was having an arrest. So we've immediately got evidence and we know that that guy's manipulating his tachograph records. That's a huge thing for our examiners. At the moment, it's all based on a knowledge of how people manipulate tachographs. Well, you actually got evidence in front of you to say that vehicle was on the road when the driver said he was just having an arrest. You sort of got him banks to rights, really. The third one was a bit of a surprise to DVSA. We ran 9,000 vehicles through ANPR, all kinds of vehicles, cars, motorbikes, vans. What was really worrying was 30% of those vehicles had no MOT and had been out of MOT for more than 3 months. That then provided us with, well, it gave us a problem because what do we do with those 9,000 vehicles? So we've had to develop a strategy, but that's something without ANPR we wouldn't have been aware of. I'm not going to tell you what the strategy is for dealing with them, but we have got one. It also enables us to identify where high-risk vehicles are. If there's an operator or a specific sector that are causing problems, we can run the data through ANPR and say where those vehicles are likely to be at any specific time. So we can then target those vehicles and stop them. For us, this is a game changer, really. It makes life so much easier, so much easier to evidence than it has been in the past. So I think going forward, it's signed off for 12 months. I don't see that it'll be withdrawn, actually, from what we've already trialled. So I think that this is going to make a big difference to the way we do enforcement. All the police forces are now signed up, DVSA is signed up, DVLA, Highways England, so there's a huge amount of data there. I'm assuming everybody here should be probably aware of OCRS. It's your operator risk score. based on data that we hold about you as operators. So if you've had any fixed penalties, if you've had any MOT fails, we rate all that data. We are about to include visits. So when we come and see you as an operator, if you have a satisfactory visit, that will then score positively for your OCRS score, and a negative, obviously, will weight in the opposite direction. Earned recognition is also a new measure that Phil is going to talk about shortly. But from enforcement's point of view, we are measuring this on risk. So it's RAG rated. It's red is obviously the worst, green is probably the best or should be. And then earned recognition should be compliant. So we would target people at the roadside based on if we hold intelligence against that operator, if they're red, if they're grey, which means they're a new operator, so they've got no data with DVSA, so they've had no test data. And then amber, then green. Earned recognition, we would only stop if there was something obviously wrong with the vehicle, if there's an observed danger. Automatic number plate recognition, this is alongside NAS, and weighing in motion sensors. On the gantry you can see there's cameras on every lane, and then this on the right, this is a quartz sensor in the road that weighs vehicles as they go over, as they, while they're moving on the motorway. We have quite a number of these sites nationally. There's one at Doxey, Junction 14, I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. When the vehicle drives over the sensor, in the office or in the stopping car, we will get this data. In this case, it's showing that the vehicle is 15% overloaded on the tractor unit, but it's okay on the gross weight. It's also showing that it's travelling at 47 miles an hour, what type of vehicle it is, what time, what temperature. We have to be aware of the temperature can have an effect on the sensors. That's why we're trialling quartz sensors that are more accurate to changes in temperature. This vehicle is quite interesting because this doesn't just show the weight. Obviously it shows that it's overloaded by quite a lot. If you see 17% on the unit, but if you look at the bottom, it's more than 5 tonnes overloaded on the gross. Our stopping officer will be able to identify that going past and pull it into the road check and have a calibrated weigh check. What it also tells us on this particular case is there's an intel marker against the vehicle, if you can see that on the top. So that'll be some sort of information about that operator. And it also tells us that it's red for traffic and amber for roadworthiness. And he's on the speed limit at 56. And it tells us, well, it tells us where the sites are. Obviously, exactly where they are slightly blacked out. The other thing we're trialling currently is this is called a wheelwright system. This is installed at Curedon on the M6 in Lancashire, and it's a trial running alongside Highways England. And effectively, what happens is the vehicle, as you can see, drives over the weigh pads. There's also it measures the tyre pressures automatically. It measures the tread depth automatically. It checks for any tyre damage. It looks at the tyre markings and the age of the tyres, which is quite a big thing for DVSA at the moment. And it checks the axle weight. And finally, it checks the wheel temperature. So if there's no temperature in the wheels, it's a likelihood that the brakes aren't working on that particular axle. That information is captured by ANPR and then is fed to the DVSA examiner, who can choose to either check or not check the vehicle. We're trialling this at the moment. We don't know if it's going to be useful for DVSA. It's very useful from a point of view of, I think the system is sold to operators who've got big fleets and they can check the vehicles as they go out of the door and gives them some reassurance that the vehicles are okay. From our point of view, we're not sure yet. We're running the trial to see whether it's useful. It's probably not useful at a fixed site like Curedon, where we're bringing the vehicles in as a targeted check, but maybe at the services we can use this to run vehicles over and see whether vehicles need checking by our examiners. We'll see. That's it. It also takes high definition underside photographs, which will also give the guys, particularly places where we don't have under inspection facilities. The final piece of technology is we call DVSA search. All DVSA examiners have got an iPhone. They've got quite a number of apps created by DVSA to help them to do the job, to help them to be more effective in the way they target. DVSA search is really useful for our guys who are not at a DVSA specific site, so we don't have ANPR data there, we don't have a lot of information that we can use. So what the guys can do is they can type in the registration at the top, or you can take a photograph of it, and it will then give us all the data that we hold on that operator at the roadside. So it'll tell what the vehicle, what type of vehicle it is, make and model, the operator license history, any outstanding prohibitions, intel data, test history. It'll tell us if it's got an MOT, if it's taxed. So that means that the guys at the roadside where all they've got is a van and a lay-by, they can make a pretty good guess at whether or not they need to check the vehicle. If they put that vehicle reg in and it's all green and everything's fine, then why check it? Let's let it go. If there's loads of red, then we're going to have a look at it. It's very popular with our examiners, because what they can do is they can check for foreign and UK vehicles. As you say, it's instant access, it's live data, so it's everything that's up to date. If the vehicle's prohibited, it will tell us. And then each section expands. As you can see on the left, that will be the levy for vehicles who are non-UK, whether they've paid the levy or not, whether they've paid it at the right level. It'll give the examiners ANPR hits for the last 10 hits for that vehicle. It'll also give operator details, so is it valid license, this one's earned recognition, what kind of license is it, restricted, what kind of company is it. And I believe there's also, this is about to get updated to include the vol data, the operator licensing data, so we can see if there's any undertakings or any restrictions on the license. It is really, really useful for targeting the right vehicles and leaving the guys who are doing the job properly alone, which is what we're trying to do. The other way we're using technology is tachograph manipulation. Somebody said when digital tachographs came in 2006, it was impossible to manipulate them. It took somebody about, I don't know, a couple of weeks, I think. There's quite a lot of tachograph manipulation in the digital forum. We're using technology to try and identify those manipulations. What we're doing is we're using here, these are voltmeters and onboard diagnostic meter at the end. So these readings don't tell us that there's a switch fitted. What they tell us is that the vehicle is operating outside its norm. So the voltage drops, or the ampage, or there's too much or too little resistance within a circuit. I don't want to get too technical, but if we can then see that there may be something wrong with that, then we can dig further and try and find more information. This is also where NAS and ANPR helps, because if we think there's a manipulation, we can then run that vehicle through the ANPR database. What we've done, along with Lyle, is develop this check meter for our enforcement staff. It's designed entirely for enforcement. It's got 7 different checks on voltage, ampage, resistance, and that's really useful. So our guys can see if there's anything potentially wrong with the vehicle. And we found a lot of things. I don't know how technical people are here. On the bottom right, that's the sender that goes into the gearbox. That's actually got another circuit board soldered onto it so that they can be turned off and manipulate the tachograph. The one on the top right, that's a key fob that turns the tachograph on and off. The one on the left, that's a PCB circuit board fitted into a tachograph head once again, so they can turn them off sometimes with phones, sometimes with key fobs. So it's quite technical, and I think a bit like any crime, once we found one manipulation, then some clever 15-year-old finds another way of doing it. So we're always chasing, but our guys are quite proactive, and we've got more tools than we used to have. The other thing we've done quite a bit of over the last couple of years is emission enforcement. So this is people who are deliberately subverting their AdBlue system. We've done quite a bit of research with the DFT looking at how we can use different types of emission equipment at the roadside and at MOT. We're also talking to manufacturers because, like tachograph manipulation, when you start to interfere with the CAN bus system on a truck, it doesn't just affect the AdBlue or the tachograph. It affects all sorts of other things, including the brakes, the gearbox. So manufacturers are quite keen to work with us to try and identify this. We use a lot of similar information, similar tools to tachograph. We use onboard diagnostics, checking the CAN system, and doing some remote sensing. We're also working with the EU, some of our enforcement counterparts, to try and identify any particular types of manipulation in the AdBlue system. Onboard diagnostics has been really useful for us. It indicates faults or manipulations, so it gives us a timeline of faults, so we can plug our onboard diagnostic machine in, and then, for example, on this one, the AdBlue errors, it's got 168 AdBlue errors. That's probably not normal. Well, it's definitely not normal. We can then look at the dates. So that's between the 5th of May and the 11th of July. So that shows that that's been happening for quite a long period, and that would make our examiner suspicious and look further and try and identify particular AdBlue emulators. As you can see there, those are some AdBlue emulators we found. They're not even trying to hide it. That one says AdBlue emulator on it. This has dropped off quite a bit. We've done a lot of work with this, with enforcement, and TCs have been involved. And I think it seems to be the cost of non-compliance is quite high. If you fit an AdBlue emulator, to get that removed and then get the vehicle put back right again is really expensive. So it seems to be dropping off, or the operators are getting better at hiding it. We're not sure yet. We'll see. This is very simple. That's just a resistor that kids the system into thinking the temperature is what it should be. I just want to talk quickly about vehicles that we've encountered at the roadside and what we find with vehicles. If you look there, this is 1819. We encountered 163,000 HGVs. 28% of those are non-compliant. That to me shows that what we're doing is probably reasonably good. The fleet compliance prohibition rate is about 11%, I think. So if we're hitting 28%, we are targeting the right vehicles. What worries us as an agency is that 50% of what we found at the roadside, the driver would be aware of. He should have done a walk-around check, or when driving the vehicle, he should be aware of the fault. Top 5 for mechanical or brake components, condition of tyres, defects in the suspension, service brake operation, and spray suppression. All of those things potentially could have been identified by the driver. The top for traffic are daily rest. There's no excuse for not knowing or not realising you haven't had sufficient daily rest. Number 2 is exceeding 4.5 hours. The tachograph actually tells you you're exceeding. Daily driving, excess weight is another one, and tachograph charts and records. What that bottom one means basically is driving without a card. All those things are fairly inexcusable for a professional driver. These are one or two, just so we just have a few horror stories towards the end. These are wheels that are likely to become detached immediately. You can see there's no wheel nuts on some of these. They're falling off. They're very elongated, so they clearly hasn't just happened. Brake discs fractured, bits fell off. The one on the left, half of that disc has fallen off on the road. I don't know, you guys will be aware, the size of a truck disc is quite huge. If that's bouncing down the road, hits somebody, a pedestrian, motorcyclist, that's not something that's had a 6-weekly inspection any time. Well, in the last 6 weeks, certainly. This vehicle stopped on the motorway on the M6. This bus is carrying children. You can see it's got 1, maybe 2 wheel nuts just about holding the back wheel on. You can see the wheels actually coming off. If we understopped that vehicle, well, well, we don't know what might have happened. A few more brake chambers hanging off. What we've decided to do as a tactic, maybe it's a tactic, is to promote what we find at the roadside. So we use Twitter to publicise what we find, to try and emphasise to people what's going wrong and what they could do about it. This is one tweet. It's broken leaf spring, the SI leaf spring. Not surprising, as the officers put, it was 54% overloaded. We're trying to promote this type of thing. This was working at Blackpool Zoo, checking coaches and buses, and these are vehicles that predominantly carrying children. They've got tyre defects, we've got tachograph offences. It really needs to be highlighted. That was stopped. That's got a 2-metre overhang. It was a rainy night. Anybody behind that vehicle's got no chance of seeing the lights. And if they see the lights, they might think that the lights are actually where the vehicle stops, not 2 metres behind it. Also, the driver didn't have a CPC, so he gone to court. We're doing quite a bit of work on, I don't know if anybody here does abnormal loads or STGO. We're doing quite a bit of work stopping and checking STGO vehicles, which has been quite fruitful. This vehicle was stopped in Oxfordshire. As you can see on the left, the driver has got that radio and all those wires and bits and pieces hanging down. We made him take them out and actually fix penalty him, because you can see on the right, when all the gubbins is taken away, that is seriously affecting his review to the front. It's also affecting his ability to see the obligatory mirror. This vehicle was stopped at Dartford, and it was stopped not because they saw it, but because they could hear it. The stopping officer could hear the wheel falling off. He could hear it clanking about. If you can see there, those are all the wheel nuts just about to become detached. There's no excuse for driving vehicles like this. This isn't a failure of, well, it is a failure of maintenance, but it's also a failure of the driver. The driver hasn't done a walk-around check on that vehicle. Very quickly, I thought you might, I don't know if you're interested or not, but this is LGVs at the roadside. So vans, small vans, 3.5 ton vans. If you see the difference of 25,000, just short of 25,000, 48% are non-compliant. A bit troubling for DVSA. With that in mind, DFT have published a road safety statement this year, and in that they're quite keen to police non-testable trailers. So trailers like caravans, builders' trailers, plant trailers, also the bigger non-testable trailers. We did about 1,000 in February. 50% of those trailers were unroadworthy. So DFT have asked us to do some more checks. We're doing a further 2,000 this year. And I think the problem is that people who've got a trailer or a caravan, they hitch the trailer on, they don't even check it. It might have been stood for 6 months. They just hook it up and off they go. You can see this, the inside tyre wall severely perished, the breakaway cables almost, in fact I don't think it's actually attached. This is another prime example of problems with trailers. This trailer was manufactured in 2002. It's got the same tyres on it as in 2002, which you can see is severely perished. The age of tyres, they deteriorate quite badly. It's something that we're quite aware of and we're quite proactive on at the moment. The DFT, I think, are quite keen that this type of trailer will come into scope for some sort of MOT or test or registration because they're clearly not roadworthy. This vehicle was stopped, the breakaway cables almost rotten through, there was no light board, and I don't think we call that, I think we might call that unsafe loading, one strap. This is another vehicle they stopped on the same day actually, and the handbrake cable's rubbing through the side of the tyre. The issue for DVSA and for DFT and I guess for everybody is in 2016, I think 17, a trailer came detached because the breakaway cable was defective. It mounted the cable, mounted the pavement and killed a little boy named Freddie Hossey, a 3-year-old boy. just because somebody was driving a trailer that they hadn't bothered checking. Now, his parents and DFT and DVSA are very keen that we raise the profile of non-testable trailers, particularly, I guess, with caravans or people who maybe don't use the trailer commercially. If you don't use it for 6 months and then immediately hitch it up and off you go, it really needs to be checked. There's no excuse for this. There's no reason why anybody should be driving a vehicle on the road with tyres like that. DVSA are not about persecuting operators. What we're about is road safety, making the road safer. Nobody can think that that is acceptable for any driver or operator. I think that's exactly bang on half an hour.
All right.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard.
Howard, hi, James. Could I push you just a little rather than let you wriggle out quite so much on your strategy with regard to those non-compliant operators and MOTs? Because actually that's really important to us as compliant operators.
Are you talking about the
You quoted quite a high number that you spotted of without MOTs.
That's not. That's across the whole. That's every type of vehicle, cars.
So I appreciate that, but we can look at it in two ways. We can say as professional operators, it's a concern to us because of the competition aspect. But even those that aren't in our industry, it's still a concern to us because we want to drive on the roads with safe road users. So what is your strategy to resolve that?
The heavy goods industry and the PSV industry are nothing like that figure. The number of people who drive without MOT is very low because it's all monitored by us. It tends to be that figure of 30% is cars, vans, motorbikes. We're actually at the moment contacting all 9,000 of those. The 30% of the 9,000. We're contacting all those people to establish what the situation is with their MOT and whether we take it any further.
Great, thank you.
But certainly from an industry point of view, that is really the private and non-regulated end. HGV and PSV tend to be a lot higher. Yeah.
Thanks, Howard. I have one question for yourself. I work as an independent for several operators, fleet operators, and we're increasingly struggling to find MOT booking days. Now, it may not be quite your scene, but it is a problem within the industry that we have to wait an awful long time to get MOT days. Is there any solution coming forward for us?
No, not that I'm aware of. We've recruited quite significantly. Phil might have some information.
I've got a bit of an update, yeah. The advice is to let your local EDM know, who should be feeding it back. I have heard that there's been issues with this, with booking dates, and also with potentially ATFs booking dates in advance before they've bought the slots from DVSA, which is why potentially you may be getting cancelled tests because they've booked you a test where actually they never had a slot to do that test. But of course, I'm sure the message going back may be a little bit more DVSA have cancelled the MOT. So if things like that do happen, let us know. We can't do anything about it if we don't know. So let us know through the inquiry mailbox, which is inquiries@dvsa.gov.uk, quoting all the information that you've got, because that's something that we need to look into. So as I mentioned earlier, although there's an ATF freeze at the moment, with mitigating circumstances, we can look into opening more ATFs. So for example, if there is a real shortage of test slots in a certain part of the country, we can look into whether or not it's feasible to open another ATF.
Thank you for that. Any more questions before we let this gentleman sit down? Okay, thank you very much to both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Very good.